Hello, hello, Train My Traffic people. Molly and John here for your Tuesday, February 25th feedback call. Hope you guys are having an awesome week. I'm excited to get caught up with you. On Friday, I actually flew here to New York. John and I are live in person. We're in different rooms right now, but we are in New York currently with Ezra, and we are finishing up shooting a work-life balance course called The Balanced Being. And we're actually going to give that to you guys for free. So we're describing it as everything that matters in business, or as a person working in digital business that actually has nothing to do with business. So, communication, taking care of your personal life, your health. It's a really cool course. I'm super pumped about it. And as soon as that's edited here in the next few weeks, like I said, we'll give you guys free access. So just pumped, wanted to let you guys know. I hope you enjoyed last Thursday's session. I know we have a lot of questions. We're going to do the same thing that we did last week and answer as many as we can today live for you guys. Anything that might be a bit more detailed or is like a video, we're going to put on the overflow list for me to answer in the next 1 to 2 days-ish. So that's sort of how today will flow. John, how you doing?
I am doing great. It is funny. We are literally like 100 feet apart, but I just think we have like that 1 second delay. So I'm going to go ahead and say it's a computer problem, not a distance problem. But otherwise, I see a few questions rolling in.
Hey
If it's
guys.
okay, Molly, I might like to start. I just remembered I saved a bunch of questions from when we were on the call last Thursday that I
Yes.
thought we would start with. So if you give me one
Cool.
second, we might run through those really quick just because
Yeah,
I
go
want to make sure
ahead.
we covered all those. But otherwise, I'm excited to be here. We talked, I want to say it before, and we'll mention it a bunch in the group, but for the Q&A next week, so 7 days from now, we're going to move that 2 hours earlier because Molly will be at Social Media Marketing World talking on stage. So we got to give her a little bit of space between the presentation and the talking to you, but also talking to people in front of 1,000 folks. So like I said, we'll remind you a few times, but just kind of a heads up while we're a week out. Otherwise, if you're ready, Molly, I will dive into these questions ASAP.
Yeah, let's do it. And just a little recap, guys. Last Thursday, we started diving into the tactical stuff that goes into Facebook marketing. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions about that here. Please realize that, like this question, for example, that's live on the screen, I'm going to go so deep into targeting, copy, and creative over the next few weeks. So not that I don't want to answer these questions for you guys, but please keep in mind that a lot of this content is coming to and that it's going to be explained as we move forward. So Thursday, we dove into the tactical stuff with Facebook. This Thursday is a recorded session. There will not be a live session. This session will appear in the members area on Thursday. We'll email you guys when it's there. This session's all about avatars, targeting, a lot of the questions that I see right here in this first question in the Facebook group. And then the next week we'll move into copy, then creative, and on from there. So just to set the stage where we are right now, again, happy to answer your all's questions, but if you can, please just be a little bit patient for us to get to these topics, because a lot of the questions are things that we are going to cover. And I know that you're excited and ready to dive in, but I also want to use our time together answering questions on stuff that we've already covered. So I'm happy to answer the questions, Sean, but just a good guideline for everybody.
Perfect. That's, I mean, very, very helpful for everyone I know. So diving right in to make the most of our time, from last week, someone said, if we find winning ad sets and break them out in separate CBO campaigns, when you see that they've won, do you want to move them all into a single CBO campaign together, or leave them alone and just keep scaling them where they are?
So I'm not quite sure I followed that. I'm sorry if you don't mind to repeat that.
No, no worries. So imagine there's 3 separate CBO campaigns that each have one winning ad set. Should those 3 ad sets be grouped together to a single CBO, or should you just leave it alone and scale them as it is?
Yeah, if they're working separately, then definitely leave them alone and scale them as they are. If you do start to see fatigue or that campaign just falls outside of your appropriate success metrics, then, when building a brand new CBO campaign, right? Because scaling is all about building new campaigns after things have fatigued, then you would want to build a campaign that, in my opinion, you would sort of squish those together and put them into the same CBO campaign if possible.
Perfect. Makes sense. And then Teresa was asking about dynamic DPA ads. And I think I know the answer, but it's probably good to address it now for everyone. Is there a way to generate social proof with dynamic DPA ads, or is that just not an option?
With DPA, no, that's not an option. When you're using dynamic creative, so I'm not sure exactly which one you're speaking to, but when you're using dynamic creative, that also makes it difficult because there's not one post ID. It's why a lot of people get errors when inputting post IDs of ads that have used dynamic creatives because there are actually multiple versions of those ads. And don't worry if you don't know what I'm talking about. We'll go deeper into this during the putting it all together module that comes after the creative module. But yes, with DPA or with dynamic creative, it is very tough to aggregate social proof because one variation of that particular ad doesn't actually exist. And it's why the word dynamic is in both of those. So good question. And Ezra will cover dynamic product ads in its entirety in a session that belongs in the retargeting week.
Perfect. Great answer. Okay, so next, Raymond said, if I want to add new audiences to a campaign, do I add those new audiences to an existing ad set, or should I create a new ad set?
So it really depends. If you have a campaign that's using budgets at the ad set level and things are working well and you want to scale, which we'll have a whole module on scaling, that is a time when you would create new ad sets within that campaign targeting new audiences. If you're using CBO, I definitely don't recommend that journey, adding new ad sets and therefore new audiences into an existing CBO campaign that's working, because it tends to really throw off the optimization, just completely throw things off. So it depends on how your campaign is structured, but yeah, that's the way I would go about that.
Perfect. And then our last one from last week, Jason said, would you recommend running an engagement ad while running the same ad on a purchase campaign? So using the same ad with the same post ID on both an engagement campaign and a purchase campaign.
Yep, there's nothing wrong with doing that, Jason. And even if you're targeting the same audience in both of those campaigns, it would be perfectly okay because you're using different objectives. And we'll learn more about this, but when it comes to the inventory and sort of this auction process, one of the biggest factors that Facebook's taking into account when showing consumers ads is the objective of the ads. So John and I could be both targeting, the same interests around golf, and John could be using the engagement objective, and I could be using the conversion objective, and we actually wouldn't really be competing because Facebook looks at those differently. And the reason for that is, let's assume that John's a consumer. They don't want John to log on to Facebook or Instagram and start to scroll through their feed, start to scroll through his feed and just see ad after ad after ad that is using the conversion objective, even though John doesn't know that they're using the conversion objective. Facebook sees that as, those ads are probably going to be more direct response and asking someone to buy something or to do something. So they try to mix it up in the feed and within these other placements so that people are seeing ads that are of different objectives, because therefore they're probably different experiences. So I just wanted to explain that to everybody. And this is something, it's why you see with Boom, especially in the retargeting campaigns, right? We have lots of retargeting campaigns, as you guys saw in the traffic system. Some of those campaigns are actually targeting very similar audiences, but they're using different objectives. And that's the way that we are avoiding that overlap or that competition. So you would be totally fine to do that, Jason, and the engagement campaign, if you have that budget, would definitely help to build that social proof. So great question, buddy.
Awesome. All right, so we've wrapped up all the kind of rollover, carryover questions from our session 3. So we are good to dive right into the Facebook group.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we'll start with this first one. Question from session 3. How is bidding measured? By how much money you put by day or by hour? How is busy? Okay, so an example, if you have a $24 a day budget, is different than $10 between 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Is the first one you would be putting an average of $1 an hour, and in the second case you would be putting. So I'm not quite sure the question, but I feel like you're really overthinking this. Just to be direct and honest in communication, I don't. By how much money you put by day or by hour. So if you go back to Thursday's training, I actually talk about not using day parting, which it sounds like you're considering using. Even if you have a really small budget, the only time I would use day parting is if I'm working with a sales team and I'm sending them direct phone leads to immediately call. That's a very rare situation. I've only been in, maybe 1 or 2 scenarios where I'm running ads to a literal live sales team. And that is the only time I have found day parting to even be slightly useful because it takes too much control away from Facebook, and they have a lot of trouble with momentum if they're having to turn ads on and off based off of the time of day. It's definitely something I don't recommend. Please don't do it, guys. So how is bidding measured? By how much? I think I answered your question. If I didn't, please clarify a little bit more, and I'm just going to move to the next one. Why do you use auto all placements instead of just mobile feeds or Instagram story if you know the audience is different from platform to platform? Wouldn't you be able to give more context based on the platform placement you use? So the reason that I use automatic and all placements whenever I can, there are a few reasons. Number 1 is social proof. So again, we'll learn more about this over the coming weeks, but we always try to create copy and creative that's going to work on as many placements and Facebook platforms as possible so that we can aggregate as much social proof as we can onto a few ads. Another reason we do this is because we want to play into how Facebook's algorithm works, which is Facebook, as we talked about last Thursday, where we are with the machine learning is actually really advanced. And the more that we try to hack and kind of overthink this and create, a campaign for each placement and try to force reach, it just doesn't work. We want to allow Facebook to optimize this to the best of their abilities. We're giving Facebook an objective, we're giving them assets to work with, and they know what the goal of our campaign is. So instead of us saying, hey, let's show over here on this placement, or let's show over here on this placement, let's allow Facebook to optimize the campaign or the ad sets and show the ads on the placements that are working the best. It just absolutely works the best if you're looking for a high volume of results at the lowest CPA or CPL possible. So there are times where you might only use a few placements, or you might uncheck some placements. We'll talk more about that in the copy and creative modules, and a lot of the over-the-shoulder examples that I show you. There will be some nuances where maybe we won't use certain placements for certain reasons, and you guys will see that. But across the board, whenever possible, please use all placements. What's a good size for targeting? Okay, guys, we're going to get deep into targeting on Thursday, but I'll answer these. What's a good size for targeting New York City, and the potential reach is 8 million people, and all platform and ages between 18 to 65, both women and men? I mean, how do I find out which audience size is good for using with CBO? Well, it depends on what you're selling. I mean, New York City, most local businesses, I don't recommend adding on any other layers of targeting interests or lookalikes because it makes the audience sizes too small. Like I mentioned last week, in New York or LA or really big cities where you are looking at something like 8 million, we might want to pare this down, but it kind of depends on what you're selling. So, if you go back to Thursday, I talked about testing audience sizes being between, at minimum, 500,000 if you're not location restricted. So, that could be a good starting place for you, is try to, based off of this Thursday session, which is all about targeting, let's try to find some interests and lookalikes and different targeting options that we can layer on to this location to hit about 500,000. So in the case of Boom, why do you guys use ages between 50 to 65? If Facebook only gives you data by the tens, I mean, when you break it down, you can only read 18 to 24, 45 to 54, 55 plus. I mean, how do I know I'm not wasting money? So, buddy, I want to give you some more direct feedback. I think that you're overthinking a lot of this, and this is a huge mistake that lots of marketers make. And you're thinking more about how to save money than you are about having how you're going to make money. And a lot of that overthinking is what's causing us to fail on this platform, because the platform's actually built for you to not overthink, right? Like, what we should be overthinking is the offer, the targeting, the copy, the creative, the actual assets that go into reaching an audience and making a compelling offer and entering the conversation that's going on in their mind, and really, creating an experience that wants them to take the desired action. This is the reason that we target 50 to 65 plus is because that's who buys the makeup, right? We're selling to women over the age of 50. Ezra doesn't care if Facebook isn't going to let us break it down in that specific age group, because this is the goal. This is who we're speaking to. And we would never want to leave out people that are 50 to 55. We also would never want to target 45 to 50, because we are speaking to women over the age of 50. We're very open about that. And if we're showing that messaging to women in their 40s, that could cause some issues, and not be a great experience for people. So it's honestly not something I've ever noticed. Ezra probably has no idea. Boris probably has no idea. And we're doing it because that's who our audience is. What objective to use for the chicken butter strategy for sending cold traffic to register for a webinar? So the butter chicken is for e-com, direct to product page, to generate a sale. For that, we use the conversion objective and we select purchases. If we're sending traffic to a webinar and we're going to a squeeze page and asking for registration, we're using the conversion objective and we are optimizing for a custom conversion or lead. And you can learn more about this in the bonus videos in module 2, where I go through the entire TMTP launch from last September, because I talk about the objectives and the campaign structure for all of those campaigns. So you could learn more in that video. So awesome, John. Let's move on to the next one. Awesome. All right. So Glow is in the house here. Hello, Molly. Thanks for the amazing training. Thank you so much for the gratitude. Makes us feel good. I wasn't able to tune in live, but definitely had that one on repeat this weekend. Love it. That's definitely one to watch multiple times. And of course, I have some questions, so no problem at all. I live in Canada. Awesome. Language is a real big deal here. Do you think I should factor in language in my testing campaigns? Do you think focusing on either English or French would be better, as to not dilute my budget? Great question. So usually in these scenarios, I try not to, I actually try not to pick a language unless I really, really need to. Like, let's say that we're targeting a country where we just know that most of those people simply aren't going to speak English or don't even understand English. If that is the case, then I would definitely just select French. If you feel like, okay, these people speak French, but they're still going to understand English, I wouldn't select any language at all. Does that make sense, Sean? So unless you really need to, I would not go one way or the other. I would just stick to, using English and sticking with that as your language. If you feel like you're in a situation where you're simply going to target people that just don't speak English, then I would set up 2 different campaigns, actually. So everything that you need to do in the testing phase would be doubled. And you would just need to set up essentially the same campaign, but only targeting people that speak French. I don't feel like that's the case in Canada, and I would just speak to English if you could. So let me know your thoughts around that, if that resonates, but really, really good question. Presently, I only sell in Canada and not worldwide. How big of an audience size should I aim for in a scale campaign? Well, it's kind of hard to say because I don't know like the citizenship numbers in Canada. I don't have a lot of insight into that. I would try to hit the numbers that we share during the training whenever possible. If you can't, then you're just going to have to go with smaller numbers. So again, guys, everything I'm teaching you are guidelines. If you can't hit that number, it doesn't mean your campaigns are going to fail. I'm just trying to give you some benchmarks to hit. And especially if you're restricted by an area like you are here, you're probably not going to be able to target 30 million plus people like you see in some of my audience sizes. That's fine. And I can't give you a specific number because I don't have experience in that market. If you want to post in the group, maybe some targeting and what you're looking to do and the potential audience size, I can tell you how that feels to me and if I think it's going to work. But I wouldn't think, too much. Don't have the mindset that because you're going with smaller audience size numbers, the campaign is going to fail. We know that it's more likely to succeed with larger audience sizes, especially when we're using CBO. But we also understand that not everyone has that large of market sizes. And we have lots of use cases where people are succeeding with smaller audience sizes, even people selling in like just the UK. Or I had a call last week, John, with Niall from last round of TMTP. He launched a new business right before TMTP, selling clothing. He started running ads in September just in Ireland. And this dude is at over 100 orders a day, which I'm really pumped about. And he's working just in Ireland, which is a really small country. And I will tell you, from seeing what he's doing in this particular scenario, his audience sizes are about 1 to 4 million. So that could maybe, I know Canada's a lot larger than Ireland, but that might give you, some audience sizes to work with there for scale. But he's doing really well and is refined to a pretty small area and still selling B2C, which is super exciting. So hopefully that helps. My product range is between $39 and $99. How much should I be aiming to spend per lead to see a good ROI? I'm not sure because I don't know what your funnel is, right? I would need to know, are you sending traffic to a webinar? What funnel have you selected? Do we have any sort of conversion rate numbers from, say you're doing a webinar, like what's your purchase rate from people who sign up from the webinar to actually purchasing your product? So there's no way for me to tell you that without having a little bit more information. My e-com business is an organic hair care products. Should my core offer be free samples, free shipping, a healthy hair checklist? So I'm not sure if you watched Ezra's training in Module 2. If you haven't successfully run ads to your hair products and generated purchases, then I would definitely start with the butter chicken, which is simply sending traffic from an ad directly to a product page in order to generate sales. So things like free shipping aren't really an offer. A healthy hair checklist, like I definitely wouldn't start with a lead magnet for an e-commerce business. Free samples could be a good front end offer for you, like you saw with ODG Apparel, the Christian apparel brand, with the free stickers. But that was something that David did after he had proof of concept with the butter chicken. So I would go back to Ezra's training in Module 2 if you haven't watched that. And I would focus on the butter chicken if you're just getting started. If you're not and you've already mastered that, then I would go with the free samples, but don't position them as free samples. Free samples don't feel very valuable. They feel like something that creepy people hand you at the mall. You need to definitely reposition that, very similar to how we did with the free stickers, right? There is a time and place for, essentially a free plus shipping offer is what you're doing. There is a time and place for this, but it needs to be positioned in a much different way than just giving them free samples. So anyways, it depends on where you are there. And yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Thanks for the great questions.
I love that about free samples, Molly. That's that's really, really funny. I think that's a great way to do it, right? Positioning is really important. So yeah, don't call something free sample. Give it a fun, sexy offer name around it.
Yeah. Yeah, Lisa said in the Russ Henneberry video, it mentions that there will be ad samples for us to see. Where are those? So Lisa, those will come during the ad copy module. Um, she says, we have an expensive product, so it looks like the video series and the webinar is the best for us. Is there any type of video here for how to put together a great webinar, like a do's and don'ts video on how to get people interested in your product? So no, that's not something that's really in the scope of this program. People like Amy Porterfield and Russell Brunson, you can just Google, different search terms around webinar marketing, and you'll probably find some great information. The keys to a webinar are, number one, make sure that whatever the topic, the headline, the subject of the webinar is, make sure that is as sexy as possible. Very similar to how, Russ chats about the importance of naming your lead magnet, right? You want to think about it very much in that way. Number two, you want to make sure on the webinar that you deliver really, really great value. That's so much more important than making sure the pitch comes before the 45-minute mark, or anything like that you're going to hear in terms of marketing best practices. I mean, hell, John, some of our webinars go 2 to 3 hours, but they work because they're authentic, they're genuine, we really care, we're putting it out there, and we're willing to give as much value as we can first, just to prove that to you, to prove to you guys that we are real and that you can trust us and that we are committed to your success. And then the third part, there's actually a third part here. We need to make sure that the topic of the webinar and the content that is delivered also seamlessly leads into the pitch of your product, right? And, I talked a lot about this in Module 2 with the different info product webinars, because a lot of the mistakes that people are making is that they have a really attractive webinar. They've got a really attractive lead magnet that's generating leads, but it doesn't seamlessly lead the consumer to actually want to purchase the product. So those are just some high-level guidances. I don't know if that's a word. High-level tips for you, Lisa. If you want to throw out any ideas that you have on your webinar, happy to talk through those with you. And like I said, Amy Porterfield teaches stuff on webinars. Russell Brunson teaches something on webinars. But what's funny is in the car, Ezra, John, and I were just chatting about maybe creating a small little mini course about webinars, since that is something that we do a lot, and there can be a lot that goes into it. So if we decide to do that this year, we'll give that to you guys. But yeah, I wish we could put every aspect of business into TMTP, but we would never end. This would never be over. So she says, our product is a water ionizer. In case you have some video series ideas, we're thinking about having one of our influencers put together a 7 days to a healthy alkaline body series or something like that. I wonder how expensive the ionizer is, because I've actually had some experience in this market. And what I started with, because I'm sorry, I thought you were selling information product. Okay, you said you have an expensive product, so that's why you might go with the webinar. I might even, Lisa, think about a pre-sale article first. So very similar to 5 makeup tips for women over the age of 50, like Boom uses and Ezra went into great detail about in Module 2. That is something that could work very well for you guys. I think it's got to be a little bit more than 7 days to a healthy alkaline body, because most people probably don't even know what alkaline means. So we've got to step a little bit further out in terms of if we're wanting to speak to people who might not be so problem aware here, we need to speak a little bit more to their human experience. So I don't know exactly what that would look like, because I'm not quite sure the specific in benefit that you guys are selling with your water ionizer. You could let me know that. Like the project that I worked on was, it was portable. And so that's more of what we were speaking to, since there are, lots of options on the market for these products. But anyways, Lisa, long story short, if I were you, I would really think about first trying the pre-sale strategy, because I do agree. Since you have an expensive product, there needs to be a little bit of pre-selling done, hence the name. But I don't think we need to go directly to talking about like alkaline bodies and things like that. I think we got to step back out a little bit and speak more to the human experience and a specific in benefit for that person. Like, my 7-day free video series was, let's build a Facebook campaign together over the next 7 days. That's a very specific in benefit. Let's grow your business together. Let's build this campaign so that you're not hustling with sales calls or other marketing channels. Yeah, I think something along those lines, but more in pre-sell. And maybe it's even a case study. Like, John, I don't know if you remember, I did a lot of work in, I could go deep into this, but let's call it like the water purification market, that's a little bit broader than what we're discussing here. And a lot of what was working for us was explaining the science and the logic, which we'll get into how you guys can use logic in your ad copy during the ad copy module, but using a lot of science and logic to explain to people actually how poor quality of water, sorry, that's not great English there, that most of them are drinking, right? And really proving this point, creating this problem before trying to sell them something. So instead of saying like, hey, do you want to drink really healthy water? We actually needed to create the problem first because most people didn't even realize they had that problem. And one of those hooks was just using that logic and using that science that I was able to dig up in order to prove my point. So I think lots of different directions you can go, Lisa. And because this is an expensive product, like you can definitely get this traffic system, even a really simple traffic system, up and very profitable in my opinion, especially because there's still a lot of education to be done around water and around, I don't know what you would call it, just water safety and water health. So I would go with the pre-sale article first. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions on that. Awesome, rocking and
Molly.
rolling.
Bring in the heat.
Bring in the heat. Okay, so David got handled.
Looks like Joe handled this.
All right, so Taylor says, hey, I have a question. No problem. Several of my clients' campaigns have ad sets that are showing learning limited under delivery. From what I understand, that means they weren't able to acquire enough purchases. So learning limited actually isn't a bad thing. We have campaigns that have been in learning limited for months. So if your campaign is performing in terms of your success metrics, don't worry about learning limited. Just realize that yes, your budgets could be a bit higher to collect more data from Facebook, but it doesn't mean that learning limited isn't always a bad thing. So while it was still in learning phase, Facebook's little learn more box said they needed 50 conversions. So I talked about this last Thursday. That's actually becoming very outdated. Facebook still says it, but Facebook's smart enough now to absolutely be able to continue to optimize campaigns using the conversion objective that aren't getting 50 conversions a week. I mean, John, how many times have we seen that? Like campaigns that are even getting like some of them 15 conversions a month on some cases that are still working well. So it's a good guideline and it can be a reason that things aren't performing sometimes because Facebook doesn't have enough data. But a lot of times, especially if you're still hitting that success metric, whatever that means to you, it can be okay and not something that you need to worry about. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't go from $25 to $200 a day right off the bat. So I have several campaigns running at once. I don't want to spend $200 on one campaign. So do you have any recommendation on what to do here? So it's not a problem if the campaigns are working. Attached is an example of what I'm seeing. The campaign started on the 28th. I started small and now it's up to $15 a day, but I didn't start scaling the budget. So as long as things are working for you, this actually isn't a problem. So we can open it up if you want, John, because it looks like there might be some return on ad spend metrics and things like that. But there's really not a problem here, Taylor, unless you start to see the campaign failing. Yeah, your return on ad spend is 1.29, not bad at all. 33 purchases. Yeah, this is looking good. So I would continue to let it run and collect data. You definitely can start to scale this a bit, start to increase the budget. And you know, that will help Facebook get out of the learning phase, but you don't necessarily need to get out of the learning phase. And then your cost per click is fantastic too, 90 cents. That's super cheap for today's standards. So you're definitely doing something right in terms of the copy and the creative and the targeting and the offer here. So really, really great proof of concept. It also looks like you're only relying on lookalike audiences in terms of targeting. So definitely make sure you watch the training we're putting in the members area on Thursday, because wow, there's going to be so much more scale that you can do and that you can dive into once you go through that training. So yeah, Taylor, I really don't see a problem here, and great job getting initial proof of concept on this one. If you do have wiggle room for a little bit more budget, it definitely won't hurt you. So alrighty, next up is Hugo. I may be saying that. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hi, Molly. Can you please help us with these 5 questions for the test phase? How long is the test phase for a purchase conversion campaign when testing more than 2 ads per ad set? It's kind of up to you. I try to let campaigns run at least 5 to 7 days if possible, because if you think about a market, guys, or even let's just talk about human nature, okay? Because humans make up markets. Our cycles, right? Like the smallest sort of cycle that we have in human nature currently, other than a day, I guess, or an hour. I don't know. I'm getting intense here. We've been teaching this lifestyle class, so I'm thinking big picture. But weekly, right? Like weekly, that is something that all humans experience, right? We go through this 7-day period and it restarts. And different days mean different things for us, different behaviors. We spend different amounts of time at different hours on social platforms depending on the day. We make buying decisions differently depending on the day. So I like to, if possible, if I have the budget, let something run for at least a week, because you just never know, right? Like, let me give you an example. In the Christian market, right? Guess what day is the worst? It's Sunday, because people are with their family. They are at church. And so if I launched a campaign on a Thursday and I only let it run Friday, Saturday, Sunday, things probably wouldn't look so hot as if I was able to give it the full 7 days, because it's taking into account human behavior, essentially. So anyways, I try to give something 5 to 7 days if possible, but I always run a test for at least 3 days. You've got to give Facebook at least 3 days, even more so nowadays, 5 days, because how advanced the machine learning is. That plays on sort of both sides, to where machine learning is great, but for machine learning to work, there also needs to be data. And so sometimes, especially with small budgets, if we're not allowing campaigns to run long enough, Facebook just literally does not have enough data to even know what to do. So minimum of 3 days, try to go 5 to 7 days if possible. Really good question. In cases that an ad set has a CPA lower than the target range, would you increase the budget while testing? So I always allow things at least 7 days, like I said, before I make any changes. And we'll talk a lot about this, guys, in the optimization module, right? Keep in mind that that's coming. Like, we got so much training coming on this stuff. So after 7 days, if the CPA is lower than the target range, I mean, it really depends. You go like, do you mean, okay, in the cases that an ad set has a CPA lower than the target range, would you increase budget while testing? So yeah, after that week has passed, if the CPA or the CPL is lower than what I'm trying to hit, I'm pumped, and I'm actually going to start scaling in that particular campaign. So my recommendations generally are increase the budget about 50% every 3 to 7 days, depending on how aggressive you want to be. So if that 7-day period has has passed and you have ad sets that have a lower CPA than your target, first off, heck yeah, way to go. Second off, yeah, it's totally appropriate to go ahead and bump those budgets of those ad sets up 50%. Would you increase budget in the learning phase? If it's been 7 days, yes. If it hasn't, then no. When trying to find 2 or 3 ad sets to put in a CBO as soon as possible, and you find a winner ad, do you keep using it to test more ad sets, or you test other new ad sets? Okay, so when trying to find 2 or 3 ad sets to put in a CBO, sorry guys, I lost my headphones there. Okay, so when trying to find 2 or 3 ad sets to put in a CBO as soon as possible and you find a winner ad, do you keep using it to test more ad sets, or you test other new ads with other new ad sets? It really depends. Again, we're going to go really deep into this, into optimization, in the optimization and scaling modules. It depends very much on what you're doing. Number one, I'm not always looking for winning ads, and I'm not going to go deep into this right now because I'm going to talk about it when we launch our campaigns. But a huge, huge, huge mistake that most media buyers are making is always trying to find a winner, right? Because there isn't ever really a winner. I mean, you look at any truly successful and scalable paid traffic campaign, you have multiple ads that are working together to reach different types of people within a market. So for example, inside of Boom's acquisition campaign that's working really well right now that I showed you guys last Thursday, there are 7 ads in there that are all working equally well. And we understand that different creatives and different copy variations are resonating with different parts of the market. And if we were to say we have a winner, yeah, that ad might be generating the most purchases or the lowest CPA or the highest return on ad spend. But if we chop off the other ads that are also working, we are missing out truly in terms of volume of scale. So this is something that me, John, as like we all feel super passionate about, and it's something that I'll be talking to you guys about, and it's very important to change your mindset when it comes to this. But that being said, so when, I don't know why I'm struggling with this question, John, but when trying to find 2 or 3 ad sets to put in a CBO, I think that's the one I'm struggling with a little bit. I don't quite understand that part of the question, but so let's say I have a winning ad and I'm in a testing campaign, then do you keep using it to test more ad sets? So yeah, totally. There's no problem at all with taking those post IDs within that particular ad set that's working and creating new ad sets if you have budget at the ad set level to test other audiences. I mean, that's how testing functions. That's how scaling functions if you're scaling in an ABO campaign. And it's going to allow you to generate a ton more social proof on that ad, which is going to help it in any other campaign that it's a part of. So no problem with that. Or do you test other new ads with other new ad sets? So I'm not quite sure I understand that part necessarily. I think this will come out in the wash over the next few weeks here. And if I'm misunderstanding this, please let me know.
Yeah.
If an ad set did good.
I have one or two thoughts on this real quick, if you want to wrap it up, because I think what he's saying is, it sounds like Hugo is thinking that when you are doing the testing phase and you find some ad sets that perform, you turn off the testing campaigns and stick them all into a CBO, and you don't want to do that. If they're working in the test campaign, you scale that for now. And then the second part is saying, if you've got a winning ad, do you stop using that winning ad in your test, or can you use a winning ad both in a CBO campaign for scale and a test campaign?
Oh, heck yeah, absolutely. And we have ads that are sometimes in bunches of different campaigns, even cold traffic and at the bottom of the funnel, if that makes sense. So that's no problem at all. And thank you for your help there, John. If an ad set
No
did
worries.
good from the start, but after 4 or 5 days, the CPA starts going up, that's natural. So that's how ad platforms really function. Usually over time, you're always going to see fatigue. That's just sort of the functionality, right? It's why we run campaigns until they fatigue, and then we launch brand new campaigns so that we can re-enter the auction, because it's highly unlikely that once you enter that auction and Facebook's really optimized over the first 3 to 7 days, usually what happens is that people start to hide the ad, or they start to mark it as spam, right? This is very natural, and that can affect our quality ranking, and that's going to move us down the auction. And then you overlay fatigue onto that, and this is literally just naturally what happens inside of campaigns. So, if after 4 to 5 days it starts going up, do you consider that ad set good to use on a CBO to scale? So if an ad set did good from the start, so I'm never even looking at the data, like I said, before about day 5 to 7, because you're always going to get a false negative or a false positive. If you are looking before a full 3 to 5, I mean, for me, it's 5 to 7 days have passed, then you're looking at a false positive or a false negative, because it is going to change drastically, because that is just initially the results that Facebook's able to generate for you. So again, we're going to go super deep into all of this, like, okay, how does testing and scaling work together, right? After we launch a campaign, what do we do? What do we do if something doesn't work? What do we do if it does work? So thank you guys for the awesome questions. Okay, confession, I was feeling down last week, like maybe I made a big mistake doing the class. My sales went down and my costs went up, but things have turned around because on Thursday night, I got more pieces of the puzzle. That's awesome. I think one thing I'm learning, that even though I know a chunk of stuff, I need to sometimes take a step back or two and relax and let things digest. 100%. I would say that everybody on this call could benefit from a big deep breath and relaxing, because if that is how you come to this stuff, guys, if that is the energy that you bring to this, I promise you, you will not only get better results, but you will feel better. If you go back to module 1 and a lot of the mental stuff that I talked about, and this is a lot of what, as in John and I have been talking about when recording this course the last 2 days, that frantic, scarce, panic energy, that is going to force you to make decisions that you wouldn't if you are in a relaxed, confident state. So you are totally right. I'm the type of person who wants to implement immediately, and this is where I made my mistakes during the first 2 weeks. I was incorporating bits and pieces into the old way I was doing things, and things went south, and you had not some positive results. Yeah, totally, guys. And that's why we've built this class, whereas the first 7 weeks are all about building the assets, and then we launch our TMTP style campaigns together in week 7, so that you have all of the pieces to the puzzle. I wish this stuff was easy enough that I could explain all of it to you in 90 minutes and you could go launch. But it's not. There's way more to it, and it does require more time together to give you all the pieces of the puzzle. So Thursday night really and truly helped. That's awesome. Explanations of what ad types to use when. Oh my God, so beneficial. But what really put it over the line for me was not only what to do, but when, but also the dollar amounts for retargeting. My retargeting has gone to the next level. That's awesome. And we're not even to the retargeting module yet. I'm spending the same as I was, but it is now more focused and targeted, and my cost per retarget acquisition has gone down. Awesome. John, I know I am chatty during the trainings, and honestly, I didn't expect you to answer all the questions or even respond. I'm so grateful that you do. That's awesome. Thank you for showing that gratitude. That means a lot to us, and that's why you guys are here. We're here to answer your questions. You're a tactile learner, so chatting in the chat box helps me digest. I also take notes. I have full faith and confidence right now. So grateful. Awesome. I read through what you ask and learned so much from all these questions as well. Are you feeling the energy I am? That's so awesome. This made my day. Thank you for sharing. And this is such an awesome lesson for everybody. And guys, this happens in every TMTP. in the first few weeks, everybody freaks out. They ask questions about not the modules that we're on, and that's totally fine. And we're here to help you however we can, and we are patient people, but this is not something I can teach you in 90 minutes, and I got to give you all the pieces to the puzzle. So I'm glad you took a step back, you relaxed, and I'm most happy that Thursday's session was really helpful for you, and that even some of those slight changes could make a difference. But yeah, really great lesson for everybody, and I'm pumped for you. Awesome. Okay, Marcella, I have some questions for today. Maybe this isn't a topic that you talked before, but I'm planning to create a Facebook group for my skincare business, and I have some questions. In your experience, is creating a Facebook group for a skincare company beneficial for the brand? I'm honestly not sure about that. Any suggestions on how to handle a Facebook group for a skincare company? I know that Facebook groups are a big part of organic reach. So I really don't know. I don't think any of us have ever created a Facebook group for a skincare company. We could target Laura in here, possibly John, in case she has experience with this. I think Facebook groups are obviously great for building community. We use it more for, of course, you guys and our students and people that have already purchased. I actually don't think groups are a big part of organic reach at all. Most people don't want to be a part of more Facebook groups unless they've purchased something like you guys have here. So I'm not quite sure on that part or where organic reach would come from. And we could also, John, add Susie Nelson to the group and tag her in here. Susie is a wonderful person that we worked with at Digital Marketer. She was the community manager there, and now she actually lives, she moved to California and works at Facebook as a part of their community team, which is really awesome. So she has lots of strategies for how to run awesome Facebook groups depending on where they are in terms of your customer journey. This, like I said, is something that we do at the bottom of the funnel. I definitely would not put the time and energy to a Facebook group that is built for organic reach or built at the top of funnel, because we know how to run ads. So we can quickly and I would say automatically generate that reach that we're looking at the top of the funnel without all of the hustle of a group. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. But if you feel compelled to bring a group of people together, and I wouldn't make it around skincare, but like, for example, Boom could launch a Facebook group for women over the age of 50 to chat about what they're going through in their life and to come together and to support one another. But I would never create a Facebook group that's for just let's talk about my skincare brand, right? Because there's not really a benefit to the end user there. If you're going after like skincare enthusiasts and people that just like love skincare, they love talking about skin, that might be a direction to go, but definitely not if you're trying to sell them skincare, because they probably already have their routine. So anyways, lots of thoughts there. If I were you, this is not where I would put my time and attention. I would put my time and attention into TMTP and figuring out how to scale a business through paid traffic, because it's so much more predictable. But yeah, Laura and Susie might be able to help a little bit more. And then of course, Jo runs this group. She's our awesome community manager, and she is also a part of a lot of other Facebook groups, some which are used more at the top of funnel. So Jo might have some feedback there too, John. Sorry, I can't be more helpful, but those are some initial thoughts for you. Alrighty, so David is up next. Hi all, I hope everyone is doing great and getting a lot out of this course. I know I am. That's awesome. So glad that you're getting a lot out of it. You work for an early startup called Alpen Storage that produces a high-end bicycle storage capsule. That's super cool. We've recently launched the new website using Shopify Zipify pages and have just built out a long-form product page to drive our test campaign traffic. Our target market is both cyclists that want the storage capsule for their homes, as well as commercial property owners that can use for tenant amenities and or monetize extra space by offering daily bicycle storage services. Very, very neat, David. For our test, we're going to focus on the residential capsule and target avid cyclists. I wanted to see if we could get some feedback on this product page. So John, let's save this one for the overflow so that I can just shoot David a quick video as soon as I can with feedback on that product page. But wanted to get recommendations
You
on the
got
best
it.
on the best conversion goal for our test. We'll be using the butter chicken funnel and should have an audience of 5 million. So guys, please wait until this Thursday's training to decide on anything with your audiences, audience sizes, everything that has to do with targeting and who you're showing your ads to. Russ and I are covering this Thursday. So just wait till then if you can, if you're launching sort of TMTP style campaigns. But for the butter chicken funnel, the conversion objective and purchases is usually definitely the best choice. For you though, I'll look at this when I look at your sales page. This is such a very, very specific audience, and it looks like you're asking them to purchase. I'm not sure the price point. So it could be difficult to use the conversion objective here. And I'll kind of make a judgment call on that when I look at your product page. But generally, the best objective with the butter chicken is the purchase objective the conversion objective and optimizing for purchases. So I will shoot you a video on that as soon as possible. And I'm really glad that you're enjoying TMTP. Okay, Philippe, we are currently spending $400 a day on our cold audience. Awesome. We haven't raised the budget of the campaign for 2 weeks, but we recently started noticing the price goes up to purchase the product. So yeah, Philippe, that is the nature of an ad platform. It's just how it works. So how long do you normally wait to see if this price increase is temporary? I mean, it's definitely, I wouldn't say that it's temporary. Like I said, the nature of a paid traffic campaign is to fatigue. It's just really how these auctions function unless, there are times where certain factors might change. Like let's say another big advertiser that was also targeting the same audiences, maybe they pulled their ad spend, maybe they quit spending money and that bumped you up the auction a little bit. So I'm not trying to be doom and gloom and say that there aren't ways to decrease the CPA or increase the return on ad spend inside of an active ad campaign. But a lot of times that's just not the way it works. So how long do you normally wait to see if this price increase is temporary? That's a good question. I don't really have an answer for that, honestly. I would say, I mean, maybe 3 days, but if you're seeing a price increase, it's probably, or if you're seeing an increase in your CPA, that's probably just what's happening. Does that make sense, Sean? Like, it's usually not a temporary thing unless something on your site's broken or unless there's just a crazy outside factor that we're not taking into consideration here. So what do you normally do when you see prices go up in an evergreen campaign? So Philippe, I hate to do this to you, but like this is the optimization module, buddy. There are lots of things that I do. The first thing is figuring out why the price went up and troubleshooting and looking at 5 to 10 different metrics inside of your campaign and activity on your website to first identify why we think this happened, or especially what are the weakest assets in our campaign that need to be improved. So that's step one. Do we think it's the copy, the creative, the offer, the targeting, the campaign structure? We have a system for showing you guys how to do this that's pretty detailed. Once we figure out exactly what isn't working or what we think is causing the fatigue is when we decide to either try to edit the current campaign, which always has risk to it. It could always hurt the campaign as much as it helps. Or we can decide to launch a new campaign based off of our findings to try to further improve what's going on. So, you know, I mean, if you are using CBO, something that you could do, I mean, we're all facing fatigue in some way. Even a few hours after your campaign has gone live, you're essentially facing fatigue because there are people who Facebook feel are most qualified to take the action that you are asking for, that they have first shown that ad to. So you need to think Facebook is showing your ads to the most low-hanging fruit humans based off of your objective and your targeting. So, you know, we're always facing fatigue. So if you are using CBOs, something that you could do that's working really well, especially inside of Boom right now, is every week we add 1 to 2 brand new ads that actually don't have existing social proof that we just created that week into each ad set, just to try to give it a little lift, see if Facebook will bite on that ad. And start to show it and help us overcome that fatigue, because then those ads can be shown to people who have already seen the previous ads but haven't taken that action. Or we might have launched new ads that for some reason speak to a certain part of the market that we haven't been able to reach or to appeal to them yet. And a great example of this is Boom. Right now, like I said, we've got 7 to 8 ads in the particular campaign I showed you Thursday. They're all working well at different levels of well. But something that we identified at breakfast this morning is that all of the women in the ads that we're currently running have silver gray hair, which is amazing and totally speaks to our audience. But we realized that we need you know, to introduce some new ads, again, 1 or 2 a week. If you're using CBO, if you're using ABO, you definitely don't want to introduce new ads into an ad set. But we're introducing about 1 to 2 ads a week. And so what we're going to do next week, I'm going to go home to Kentucky this weekend. My mom just got a brand new bag of Boom products, and we are going to shoot my mom on camera putting on this makeup for a Boom ad. And the reason we are doing that is because my mom is of this age group, but naturally her hair just has not turned gray yet. And we've realized that we need some creative in this campaign, in these ad sets that are speaking to the part of this market of women over the age of 50 whose hair might not have turned gray, so that they can see themselves represented. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole here, but that's another example, guys, of why we're not trying to find winners. We're trying to find multiple ads that are working together that are going to reach different people in our market, because yeah, maybe our entire market is interested in yoga. You know, maybe you're selling yoga products and you're trying to reach the yoga market. That doesn't mean that they're all inherently the same human, you know, they all look differently. They have different pain points, right? Their different conversations are going on in their head. And so it's not about finding a winner. It's about finding a series of ads that's going to resonate with as many different types of people in that particular market as possible. So one thing that you could do if you're using CBO, introduce some ads into each ad set, 1 or 2 new ones a week if you can, and make sure that they are different from the ads that you are currently running. And again, lots more to come on this. So great question. Hey, Philippe. And I'm sorry that you're seeing the CPA go up, but again, that's very natural. This is what happens inside of ad campaigns. So don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. Alrighty, Ricardo, hello. I will put a few doubts. I think what we saw last week is essential, and I would like to have everything clear. I divide them into objectives, CBO, and the launch of TMTP. Okay. Objectives, is this statement correct? We should not use the conversion objective if the pixel does not have 100 events registered in the last month. If you don't believe that at least 20 to 25 conversions will occur per week. So no, you don't have to have 100 events registered. If you watch the bonus training with Russ in Module 2 about his launch, or if you watch the bonus training in Module 2 about the TMTP launch, you guys will see us go into even a brand new ad account that had never existed before. And the first campaign we set up was optimizing for conversions and leads for an offer that had never existed before. So Facebook might say that, but that's not true. And I already spoke to this amount of conversion thing earlier in the Q&A. It is better, of course, to have more conversions because that gives Facebook more data, but you definitely don't have to hit that 50 number. 20 to 25. I mean, guys, again, these are benchmarks. I can't tell you specifically that this is for sure going to work for you, right? But I can say that I have campaigns that are actively running that are not hitting the 50 conversion a week mark, and that are hitting more of the 20 to 25 a week mark, and maybe sometimes even less. So it's something you kind of got to test too. But yes, the last part of your statement is correct. The first part of your statement is not correct based off of my experience, even though Facebook says that. That just doesn't happen sometimes. Molly said in class that if an audience is less than 5,000, it is better to optimize add to cart. Could it not be optimized by initiate checkout, or is it an event just a little harder to get that than the purchase? Either one is fine. We just like add to cart because it happens more frequently. The product sales catalog should also not be used if the audience is less than 5,000. Yeah, it's totally fine to use product catalog sales, which also dynamic product ads for audience sizes less than 5,000. And that's actually mostly how we use them. You'll learn more about this in Ezra's DPA training. Within what audience size would you already separate and are retargeting the people who leave the cart and don't buy from the people who with what audience size would you already separate and are retargeting the people who leave the cart and don't buy from the people who visit the product page? Okay, so people who abandon the cart versus people who visit the product page and don't add to cart. How do you decide if you should choose those who have done that action? Okay, so this will be in the retargeting module. A lot of this has to do with audience sizes. And honestly, it just depends on how you want to do it. If you have a lower traffic site, then you definitely want to squish more of these together. So maybe retarget everyone who took those actions in the last 30 to 60 days because you need those audience sizes to be a little bit larger. Versus if you're a company like Boom, who has, hundreds of thousands or millions of site visitors every month, those audience sizes are way larger. And it's why they can do things like just retarget people who added a cart but didn't buy in the last 2 days. It's an audience size thing. So I'll get more into that in the retargeting module, but it really depends on how large your audience sizes are. To send people to a pre-sell post, could you choose the view content conversion objective instead of the traffic objective? So I always use conversion and purchase objective for pre-sale articles because pre-sale articles are basically glorified sales pages, and that is the action that we're looking for is actually a purchase right there in that moment. So I honestly wouldn't recommend using another objective. And the objective conversion completed registration, it asks you to give a value to the conversion. If not, a message appears warning of an error. What value should be put in? I don't know. I do not put values into there. I've never seen that error. I would honestly recommend you just creating a custom conversion. It sounds like you're having trouble with that standard event. Just create a custom conversion that triggers and that you're optimizing for, and you shouldn't have that problem. To get leads for a local business, if you have enough budget, a campaign with the traffic objective also makes sense. Would it help the conversion campaign to see what kind of people they visit the page and would also produce some conversion by helping to feed the pixel? Does it make sense to set both objectives for the same audience and see what works best? Yeah, if you want to split test those, like I talked about using 2 different objectives to the same audience at the beginning of this call, actually, there's nothing wrong with that. So it would be worth split testing it, but I still recommend using the objective that you want. Again, guys, We're not trying to make decisions to like there are nuances when selecting objectives, but we have to realize that Facebook is smarter than we think. And we don't need to just choose the traffic objective to feed more data to the pixel. If you are in the right circumstances to use the objective that is actually the goal of the campaign, then I would definitely recommend doing that. Okay, we got some more. CBO, every 5 to 7 days, you should check the CBO campaign and see what ad sets work bad and remove them. Well, watch the CBO training, please. No, you'd never remove or add ad sets from a CBO campaign. So honestly, most of these here, John, are answered in the CBO training that we put in module 2. I've heard people who make changes added ad sets to the campaign and it stopped working. Yeah, that's why I recommend not adding any new ad sets or removing ad sets from a CBO campaign. What size to choose in Spain for audience and ad sets by CBO and ABO? The country is much smaller. So I talked about that earlier. I'm not sure. I've never run ads just in Spain. But I mean, guys, you got to work with the benchmarks that I've given you and understand that some audiences are just going to be smaller because you're restricted to a location, and that's okay. So I would assume that Spain is going to operate very similar to Ireland in the example that I used earlier. And when you're using CBO, I would try to keep those ad sets above, you know, 1 million, maybe 2, 3, 4 million if you can. If you're testing, you should be fine between 250,000 and 1 million. So those are just some guidelines. Again, I don't have any experience in Spain, but we'll also talk more about this on Thursday. When you choose the different audiences in CBO for ad sets, do you notice that there is no excessive overlap between them, less than 30%? I'm not worrying about overlap in CBO. Facebook understands that there is overlap and the optimization is happening at the campaign level. All of those ad sets are working together. So again, we'll talk about this Thursday, but you don't want to use just the same exact interests and a bunch of different ad sets, but you also really don't have to worry as much about overlap. So I don't ever use an exclusion factor, ever. I'd never exclude like one ad set from the other. I'll talk about that Thursday. For local businesses, I usually use ABO 2 ads. Okay, for local businesses, I usually use ABO 2 ad sets, one with an interest audience and another lookalike. In the interest set, I exclude the lookalike because no need to do that, guys. The only time you ever want to exclude something is when you really, really need to. Like, let's say when, let's say you're selling a product that can't be consumed again, then you might want to exclude people who have purchased it in the past. But Facebook really, really struggles in terms of optimization and digesting any types of exclusions. So you don't have to exclude an audience that you're targeting in one ad set from the other. On the other hand, I think that if I put the 2 ad sets into a CBO Facebook campaign, it will be looking for leads where they are cheaper. But I also think that it can be dedicated most of the budget to one set. If you're a local business, especially in this situation, just use CBO and use one ad set. I see in the 7-day mini class, 470,000 people is not little to a CBO campaign. No, it's a retargeting campaign. I'm using CBO. We have almost 500,000 people. That's totally fine. Again, guys, remember that on Thursday, I showed you 3 different types of campaign structures. One was testing. That was using ABO, and we gave some specific audience sizes there that I'm kind of regretting now. Number 2 was a campaign built for scale that, yes, did use CBO, and I gave you some different audience sizes there. The 3rd campaign was for retargeting, which you said it's a warm campaign. This was a retargeting campaign, so I was using CBO. CBO is, unless you're using another objective for retargeting, which we'll get into in that module, like catalog sales or messages like you saw with Boom. Anytime I'm using CBO for retargeting, obviously those audience size numbers are very different from when I'm running ads using CBO for scale. So it's not that with CBO you always have to use this certain audience size. You have to look at the practical application of it, whether you're scaling, retargeting, or testing. With the budget that you spent, don't you think you could have gotten much more sales with the Jeff Walker launch? I've seen people with much less authority than you and Ezra achieve very good results with the Jeff Walker's. Yeah, I mean, of course I know Jeff Walker's style launch. We ran that all the time at DM. We don't want to sell TMTP as something that can be scaled to the moon. We enjoy making this a mentorship program. We only have a certain number of spots that we can sell. And so therefore, we're only going to make a certain amount of money on these launches. And I'm okay with it because guess what? Money is not my number one value. So if I was going to go evergreen this and sell a product that didn't have a cap on it and didn't have a certain number of seats, then yeah, we would follow a little bit more of the Jeff Walker style launch, but we did it this way because that wasn't the end goal for us. The end goal was to fill as many seats or fill a certain number of seats to this particular program, and therefore that launch style worked best for us. So awesome, cool, John, we can keep rocking and rolling.
So I'm noticing that it's been about, I think, 75 minutes, and we do have a few questions that have come in from people that are in the chat box. So I thought maybe for the rest of this, we would just cover those questions and, you know, come back to Facebook with the overflow stuff that you'll be able to film tomorrow or possibly on Thursday. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it.
Perfect. All right. Well, I will dive into these questions then. So Robert said, Facebook says if you pause an ad set and unpause it within 7 days, it will not go back into learning. But I feel like that's not how it's worked. What do you think about that?
Will you say that one more time?
Yeah, so he was saying that, you know, Facebook basically says it's okay to pause and then unpause an ad set if you do it within 7 days, but that hadn't been his experience. So do you recommend pausing? Yeah. And if so, do you think you need to do it unpause within 7 days?
So the only time I pause an ad set is if I'm in a testing campaign with budget at the ad set level and that particular ad set isn't hitting my success metric. That's the only time I'll turn an ad set off. I never turn an ad set off in CBO. I talk about that in the CBO training. And the reason for that, and campaigns work the same and ads work the same way. Anything that's been turned off really for any amount of time over like an hour usually is what I see, and then turned back on generally is just not going to perform the way it once did. And the reason for that is because of the auction and everything that I described last Thursday. So for example, if we're running a campaign and for some reason I need to turn it off, whenever I need to go back and run that campaign again, or if I ever need to run that campaign again, I'm duplicating and restarting that campaign completely fresh. And the reason for that is that it allows me to re-enter the auction. So Facebook is definitely incorrect on that. And it's why people like us have jobs, because we can tell you guys how this stuff actually works. And Facebook understands that, honestly. Like, we had a call with them last week, and we're actually going to be heading out to California sometime this year and teaching some workshops for their team, which is awesome. And a lot of their partner managers and people that are dealing with customers, just so that they can truly understand best practice outside of what works for like Nike and Coca-Cola. So I would rely on Facebook documentation the least amount as possible when it comes to that type of stuff. I think their documentation is great when it comes to figuring out how to set up a pixel and like what buttons to click to achieve a certain result. But when it comes to best practices like that, it just tends to not be correct information. And love you, Facebook. I know that some Facebookers are a part of this class right now, so they know that that's true too. So they're trying to fix it also.
Perfect. Awesome. That is a great answer. So Renee said, if you create a lot of new campaigns, does that ever negatively affect the performance on existing campaigns you're running in that account?
It really depends. I mean, it depends on if there's any competition. You know, if you're creating new campaigns that
Hmm.
are targeting the same audiences and using the same objective as campaigns that are currently active and running, then you're definitely going to have competition. So, you know, the only issue that should come into play there is competition, especially when it comes to identical objective and targeting.
Perfect. Makes a lot of sense. Carl said that he just launched a test campaign today where he excluded overlapping target audiences. Since he just launched it, is this a big enough problem that he should shut that off and create a new one where there
Yes.
is no exclusion?
Yes, duplicate, remove
Cool.
the
Awesome.
exclusions. Yeah, totally, Carl, because that will definitely throttle Facebook's optimization. So, especially since you just launched it yesterday, I would definitely duplicate and restart.
Perfect. Okay. Renee said, if I have an organic Facebook post that's performing well, do I need to run a test campaign where I'm using that as an ad, or can I take that organic post and use it straight away in a scaling campaign?
Well, it really depends. Like, is that ad promoting what you're wanting? Like, is this a step in your traffic system? I mean, a way to think of it is like, I want you to be building campaigns that grow and scale a business. If that ad can be one of the many ads that will be a part of a bigger strategy and a bigger campaign, then definitely use it. But I wouldn't just say, okay, this is working organically. Let's just take this ad and build a whole campaign around it. So, I mean, over the next few
Hmm.
weeks, as we are building the assets, you know, to build the best campaign possible, then you can consider that ad as, or that post as possibly one of the ads that you are testing in this whole process. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily just build a whole campaign around it, just one ad, you know, unless maybe it's retargeting or a quick off, like a quick one-off few day sale that you wanted to run or something like that. But if this is something, an ad that you're using for cold acquisition of customers, we got to go deeper into building that campaign.
Perfect. That makes sense. So Craig is looking at a big audience. He said, is there a scenario where I should or could target a giant broad audience like yoga, which has 100 million people in it? And if
The
so,
only,
should it be its own ad set?
it definitely should be its own ad set. The only time you would want to do that is if you are at extreme scale and or you are a super tiny local business that for some reason is looking to use interest targeting. And so it's very rare that I would use an interest that big, and I'll go into at least 2 hours on this during Thursday's training.
Hmm. Are there any circumstances under which you turn off a test campaign before 7 days had passed?
Not really, unless for some reason there's like a huge budget or money issue. And then therefore I might call it at 3 days or 5 days.
Got it. That makes sense. And then Carl just asked, does Facebook punish you or penalize your ads when you delete or hide comments on ads?
No, not that I know of. That's pretty standard and something that we do, especially, I mean, gosh, guys, people can be so rude in Facebook comments
Oh yeah,
on ads,
crazy.
especially. So, you know, anything that's inappropriate, we definitely delete that comment and actually ban that person from the page because we don't want to interact with them any further. So, totally fine to do that. But keep in mind that whether a comment is positive or negative, it is social proof, you know? And if you look at a lot of the ads that Boom is running right now, there's a shit ton of social proof and a lot of them are negative comments. But Ez is cool with it because it's social proof, and the team is also in there answering those negative comments with a lot of grace and positivity to try to turn the conversation around. But if you don't want to deal with it, or it's something just wildly inappropriate, like things that we've seen over the past, John, nothing wrong with deleting it and banning that person from the page.
Totally. Okay, Molly, we just have four more questions, so we are seconds away from the finish line here.
Alrighty.
This one, another one related to exclusions. So you really tapped into a lot of people's kind of what they're doing here. She said, hey, on exclusions, is it okay to exclude customers for cold traffic?
Yes, it's okay to do that.
Perfect. Awesome. Next, Lucas said, is there a way to create a lookalike audience from a Facebook event pixel? They want to drive email signups to sell tickets.
Not that I'm aware of, but just go into the audiences tab inside of Ads Manager, go to create a lookalike audience and see if that option's there. But I don't believe that's an option. And I honestly, not to burst a lot of your bubbles, but I don't use a lot of lookalike audiences and I find them to be mostly ineffective. So we'll talk more about that on Thursday, but I don't think you can, but it could be something that Facebook's added recently.
Cool. Awesome. So Marilee said, hey, what am I supposed to do if I've been running traffic to a page that breaks and you don't notice it? So, you're running traffic to a sales page, the page goes down for 24 hours, let's say. Does that
always
mess up
sucks.
Facebook to the point where the campaign should be restarted?
So
Yeah.
sorry you've dealt with that. I so know how that feels and it can be really frustrating. So first off, sorry that's happening. It kind of can go either way. Like that's when you need to give Facebook another few days to see if they can recover from that. If after about 3 days you're not seeing the results that you were before the page broke, unfortunately you probably need to duplicate and restart the campaign. Because especially if you're optimizing for some sort of action that's happening on the site, then Facebook would have seen that for a whole day, no one actually took the action that you were requesting, which, to Facebook, it's like, oh, well, this isn't working, like we're not going to give this any more reach or like this is just severely changing the optimization of the campaign. Sometimes it can recover and sometimes it can't. I've had lots of situations like this. Sometimes like the pixel breaks or like the event isn't firing. Sometimes I've accidentally set up the wrong event and optimized for the wrong event. We have pages and you break all the time, URLs change. So I totally feel you on that and just see if Facebook can recover over a few days. But if they can't, that's a duplicate and restart scenario for sure.
Perfect. Awesome. And I know you've talked a little bit about this last question we've got, so I'm going to read it, but I think we can kind of say we've covered it. But Michael was saying, we've had a campaign that's been working well with about $100 cost per acquisition for $1.3 thousand a day in spend. Suddenly the CPA 8x, right? It went to $800. He's wondering at what point you would pause the ad set, and says that the frequency hasn't been a big issue. So, I know like you mentioned, we're going to be talking about how to diagnose and solve these issues, but I would say and think based on everything we've talked about today that when the CPA jumps to $800, if that is outside of your acceptable CPA range, it's definitely time to probably turn the ad set off and start thinking about the next campaign you're going to be running. You may have a contrary opinion though.
No, I agree. I mean, first off, I think you said it 10x in like a day or so. Anytime something changes that drastically, like let's say your CPA is $10, over the next few weeks, it'll inch up to 11, 12, maybe go to 15. Like that's more of what you're going to see in terms of fatigue. Anytime, like if I saw it go from 10 to 100 in just a few days, like almost guaranteed that something is broken. So I would first just quickly go through your user experience and make sure that everything's working. Yeah, I would give it, if everything is working just fine, and again, this has only been happening in the last like day or two, I would give Facebook a few more days to see if it could even out, or maybe if just for some reason that was a really bad day. Honestly, John and I, in aggregate, really only recommend looking at the performance of a campaign in a 7-day window, because that factors in what I was talking about earlier and how consumer behavior changes so much within 7 days. So if you're looking at performance day to day, you're going to struggle big time as a media buyer because those variances will drive you absolutely nuts. But with something like this, it sounds like there might be a broken asset or a much larger issue at play here.
Totally. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Molly. You have been a real trooper. I don't know if you guys know, but we've been filming for like probably 6 to 8 hours over the past 2 days. Still obviously able to dive in, and I know that's a huge part of this. So we want to make sure we honor and respect y'all's questions. Anything that we did not get to today, we will definitely be covering. I know Molly's planning to spend some time either tomorrow or Thursday doing kind of overflow questions, shooting videos, or jumping in and answering. So we will make sure we get to all of your questions, but we have hit 90 minutes and I think it's probably time to sort of hit the timeout button, let us recharge and refill, but great questions. I know the session coming up this Thursday is absolutely, hands down, the most popular training every single time we do Train My Traffic Person. So
Yes.
if you can make the time, and it's gonna be easy, right? Because this one's recorded, make sure you get in there and watch this. Maybe watch it a couple times because it is really the key secret sauce. Even if you're a local business, you're still going to get so much out of understanding the idea of a customer avatar. So definitely make sure you take the time to jump in and check out session 4 of Train My Traffic Person, all about avatar and targeting, because it is going to completely change the way you think about Facebook.
And John, also, guys, just to reiterate what I said earlier on the call, like this is a mentorship. I'm happy to answer any of your questions, but 99% of what we talked about today will be covered over the coming weeks. So if I were you guys, I would be spending this time to have us look over your assets and give specific feedback on your business, because in my opinion, that's the most valuable way to use this time. I'm happy to use it however you guys want because this is your time and we're showing up to hang out with you guys. But if I were y'all, I would be spending it getting specific feedback on your business, because a lot of these super tactical questions, they're going to be answered. A lot of them, not to say they don't matter, but the assets that we are building, what we're really focusing on, especially these first 7 weeks, matter 100 times more than your audience size or smaller things like that. So again, happy to answer whatever questions you guys have. I just want to encourage you to use this time to really get feedback on your business and the projects that you guys are working on, because that's always where we see the most success. But thanks for showing up, guys. I'll be in the group tomorrow and Thursday shooting videos, answering the rest of the questions. On Thursday, we'll send out an email. I'm going to be in the air on later Thursday when we normally have our training call. So that one will just appear in the members area Thursday. We'll shoot you an email. And just a reminder, next Tuesday, this Q&A call will be 2 hours earlier than normal. And we will post in the group and send out another reminder for that. So thank you guys for showing up. Thanks for being so active. Thanks for consuming the information. I'm glad that you guys are starting to get results. I love the post about implementing too quickly without having all the pieces to the puzzle, and that actually hurting, because I think that's a terrific perspective. Not that I don't want you guys to implement, but I just haven't given you all of the pieces to the puzzle yet. And so this is still an incomplete picture. And if you start, not that you shouldn't start taking action if you want to, but just keep that in mind as we move through the next few weeks. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, John. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you all soon.